2026 is going to be an awesome year. We got some pretty cool stuff coming up. First off, we got Foundations of Recovery. This is our flagship program. We're starting it in January.
This is for anyone, man, woman, or couple who wants to come and reclaim their heart from shame, trauma, and betrayal. We start off with an education on all sorts of principles, give you the common language. We feed you from a fire hose in terms of all things recovery.
It is such a great start to recovery. And we get at the roots of things, Tyler. This isn't like any other program. Like, this is our healing journey in process, and Foundations is where we begin.
If you look at the value that you're getting there to kick off a good recovery with all of the right education, all of the right language, and a team to get you started while also being directed by Brannon and myself through the whole process, what a deal.
So if you're interested, if you're struggling, if you've been wanting to do something for a long time, jump into this. This only comes around every so often, and we would love to have you there.
Click the link in the description to sign up for it. And to make it even sweeter, we're also including a raffle for a free pass to the Radiant Dawn retreat. Anyone who signs up for Foundations will be added to the raffle for that free Radiant Dawn pass. If you're a man and you sign up for Foundations, your name still gets entered, and you can give that pass away if you win it to any woman that you want to.
So what you're saying, Tyler, is if you sign up and participate in Foundations, you could possibly go to Radiant Dawn for free?
That's exactly what I'm saying, which is crazy because Foundations by itself is already an insane value.
Man, I sound so salesy. But it actually is awesome. So come to Foundations. And even if you don't come to Foundations, sign up for Radiant Dawn. It's beyond therapy, the best healing experiences that you can have.
Click the link below and come join us. My child was present at the Charlie Kirk shooting. How do I help manage the trauma? Welcome to the Therapy Brothers podcast.
I'm Brannon.
I'm Tyler.
We're brothers.
We're therapists.
And we know recovery.
Bring your stories, your questions, your successes with real recovery.
Hey, Tyler, you ready to have some hard conversations?
Let's do it.
Let the Therapy Brothers podcast begin. What's up, Tyler?
Brannon, how are you doing, man?
Good. Hey, I don't want to be rude. I really don't want to be rude, but you could take deep offense to this.
Uh-oh.
So just brace yourself. Yeah, brace yourself. I'm just gonna say it. Haystacks are overrated.
Oh, dude. That is actually offensive to me. It's like my favorite food.
They're good. I actually enjoy them. I enjoy them like I enjoy like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
I'm sorry, man. You had a rough night last night then.
No, I enjoy a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But it's like, haystack, whatever. But,
dude, I love haystacks, man.
What's your favorite part? Help me understand it. I don't understand it, maybe.
My kids make fun of me all the time because, for birthday dinners or whatever, it's like, what do you want for your birthday? And my wife's like, I want steak and shrimp, or I'm like, my wife's like, what do you want for your birthday dinner? I go, honestly, I'd just go for haystacks. And they just mock me. They laugh at me. They think it's so funny. So
Grandma
for people not listening, for people who have no clue what a haystack is, basically you take a little bit of rice and then you throw some chicken and then some cheese and then a whole bunch of different toppings all over the top, like vegetables like tomatoes, green onions, jalapenos, peppers.
It's like you could eat really good Asian food, but instead you eat this weird American invention of throwing a bunch of crap on rice.
You throw stuff on rice and then you top it off with there's two different ways to do it. You either do it with cream of chicken soup or you do it with chicken broth. I like the chicken broth really hot. And then it just kind of melts everything in together, and it makes a really tasty meal. Except for the fact that
I like it. I don't love it.
Well,
I do like it.
We do a Sunday dinner once a month, and it was my month, so I did haystacks. Now Brannon's complaining about it. So
I'm not complaining. I just, I want to be an honest brother.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, well, thanks, man. I
I'm
appreciate the
not
honesty.
complaining. I actually really, I'm grateful for the meal, for the hot meal.
Well, it probably wasn't worth it for the drive time to come up and
You're
eat it.
always good for a hot meal and a warm bed, man.
Whatever, dude.
Seriously. All right. Should we dive into this?
Yeah, let's jump into this. Obviously, like this is kind of at the top of everybody's mind. We got a question submitted to us today in writing, so we're going to read the question. We live, and kind of it's been kind of a really interesting situation living somewhat close to everything that happened last week with Charlie
I'm
Kirk.
20 minutes from there.
Yeah, and so like, and just kind of like the whole, I mean, everything, just the tragedy that is, just I guess first things, just a shout out to everybody who's been involved there for just an acknowledgement of the pain and the loss and the grief that's there and gone on in so many different ways across so many different lives. I think, Brannon, it's so weird because just living somewhat close to it and then having it all over the news, even me, like totally removed in a lot of ways, it's definitely affected the way that I'm viewing my life and my relationships and my priorities, and so this is a hard kind of big thing, but somebody submitted a really good question and we wanted to try to help out today.
Yeah. I just want to reiterate what you're saying, Tyler, before we dive deep into this question that we got, but the levels of trauma and it's an interesting one because I hate to say this, but people get murdered all the time. It happens, it happens in the cities across our country. And so why did this one have such a kind of reverberation, like a shock through everything? And it's more than just what happened. It kind of was a shot that rung out and brought light to so many issues and problems that we have going on. Everything from the political divide to what's happening with kids on their phones and media and all those things. Even you can bring religion into it because Charlie was so religious and gun control and all kinds of stuff. And so everybody has their angle of, I'd say, disruption in their life here. And I hate to say this, but even the people that support it and say that it was a good thing, I believe they're experiencing some disruption too, because their hearts have to get to some kind of place to get there. So yeah, it's been a really fascinating, interesting thing. And, but what we're going to talk about specifically is the trauma or trauma in general that can happen like this, and what are some things that you can do as an individual to process and to find some healing after trauma like this. Anything you want to add to that, Tyler?
No, what I think that's great, Brannon. Let's just read the question you got, and then we'll kind of get into the discussion.
Okay, so says, would love an episode about what to do after experiencing something traumatic, like being in attendance at the Charlie Kirk event and witnessing the shooting and fearing for your own life and running in the aftermath. I think you can keep it non-political, but since this happened in Utah close to home, it would make sense for you to address it. I know many people in attendance, including our 17-year-old son, and feel like a majority of the people were young, like teens and young adults. Would love advice coping, moving forward, what to keep an eye out for. Just an idea, but it would be helpful to many, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I know that you're not alone with that. We've had several people reach out just living close on how to handle this. And I think you're right. As Brannon was saying earlier, there's like layers to this. There's levels to this. There's like the immediate, like trauma of the actual situation, right? Like, so like even this, like when I heard the news that everything had happened, I made it a point not to go find the footage because I didn't want to watch it. And then when I got home that day, both of my daughters had already seen the footage. And so I felt like I needed to know what they'd experienced, and they were already having a rough time just from a very far distance. So then being in that place where that heightened emotion comes up, something extremely like in terms of the five senses traumatic happens, and then there's the fight or flight response afterwards with the mass chaos that goes on. That's kind of what she's referring to, it sounds like, in this question. And we can definitely get into this and in some things that can be helpful in the processing of these things, and things that might not be helpful too.
Yeah. Yep. I think it's important to understand how the brain works a little bit. So what I mean is, when think about, well, I don't want our audience to dig too much into your trauma right now, but there's certain things in your life that you remember. They're seared in your brain. They're just there. I think of things, Tyler, like when I saw Brewster get hit by a car.
Your first dog.
Yeah, never will forget it, and won't forget the sound, the sight, the everything about that experience. First time I saw pornography, seared in my mind, and I could go on and on down the list of things. I remember one time I pushed Rex into the street. He fell over, and his head was about 3 inches from a car tire that was driving past. Like, I remember that so well. And the lady got out and just started reaming me. So why? Like, why are these things seared in my memory, Tyler? Why does our brain work that way?
One explanation that I was given when we were in like the training for EMDR, which is a treatment for trauma, is this idea of, let's say you've got, if I'm holding my hand up, if you're watching on YouTube, if my fist is my brain, you've got on the outside, you've got kind of the top brain or the upper brain, the prefrontal cortex, and then you've got the midbrain where my thumb is tucked into my fingers, and then you have the brain stem. And the upper brain is the part that's the kind of the rational brain, and it's receiving thousands of pieces of information at any given moment, and it's filtering out all of the different pieces to say that's important, this isn't important, and then it makes kind of a file for this moment. And then it's in conjunction with the midbrain and the brainstem, it files it away and says, okay, that was my conversation with Brannon today. When something traumatic happens, what ends up happening is that the top part of the brain gets overloaded with all of this stimulus that's coming in. And then the midbrain and the brain stem actually use all of the resources, especially the brain stem, for survival. That fight, flight, or freeze response kicks in, and it draws all of the resources into fight, flight, or freeze, survival. In doing that, it in some ways fatigues or paralyzes the top brain. And so the top brain can't organize and file all of that information. And then the experience gets sort of processed in sort of a disjointed and broken kind of a way. And so that's where people start to have it. Some of it gets locked in their bodies. That's why you see some people have certain physical ailments with trauma, and then they have a hard time finding meaning. And this is a definition from Gabor Mate, his definition of trauma. There's a few that we could go through, but trauma is not what happens to you, but what happens inside you as a result of what happens to you. It's a psychic wound that leaves a scar on your soul, making you less flexible, more rigid, and more fearful. It's not the event itself that causes the trauma, but the meaning that you make of the event and the impact that it has on your inner world. Trauma can be caused by anything that disrupts your sense of safety, security, or belonging, or that leaves you feeling unloved, abandoned, or unworthy.
I love that quote. I've used that quote many times. But something interesting about it is, even if you know that, even if like what Gabor Mate said there, what happens with it, I loved how you described that, Tyler. I think it's important that we really explain what you just said. But even if you know that, this happens subconsciously and automatically.
Yeah, it's not something you think about. Something that's kind of almost just is because of the experience that you're having, right?
Yeah, it's a reaction. I experienced this thing, so now I'm hyper vigilant. Now I'm ready. I'm ready to protect. I'm ready to do what I need to do to survive in this world. And so my limbic system, my midbrain, is there firing off, saying, "We're going to take charge here because we've experienced something so overwhelming that we don't want to experience that again." And like you say, it starts to like the symptoms start to come as ailments in the body, hypervigilance or shutting down in relationships, like avoidance of attachment. Like you're hedging against vulnerability is what you're doing because you've had that trauma, and it starts to have implications on your life as a result.
Exactly. And those implications might be actual physical behaviors to where that hypervigilance leads you to maybe not put yourself out there as far into the world as you used to because you're worried about getting hurt again. It might also be a belief system kind of a thing that, if like, for example, when I was in high school and losing my friend when he fell off the school roof, and I was there and I watched it all happen and I witnessed it and I did the first aid on him and then he died the next day. I was so flooded with what had just happened emotionally that I really couldn't process it any other way. And then the meaning, and this is where that definition comes in, the scar on my soul was the meaning that I attached to it, which was I was responsible.
Mm-hmm.
I was responsible for the death of my friend. And then, of course, all the other beliefs then follow after that, which makes me blank, 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 unworthy, unlovable, like, terrible, bad, whatever else. And then because of the power of the emotional experience and the automatic belief system that it was attached to, that felt true. That experience fundamentally changed the way that I viewed myself in my life.
Yeah, it's like, and I'm not putting this out there, but this 17-year-old attending this event, the experience is one thing, but now if he walks away with a deep-seated belief or knowing in his soul that the world is not a safe place, or he can't control anything for his own safety, or he can't ever speak up without being hurt. If he starts believing things like that, then he starts acting a certain way in the world, and that trauma fundamentally changes him and his life.
That's right.
Right? So, Tyler, this sounds pretty doom and gloom, what we're saying. luckily that there is healing. It's a real thing.
We can't really fully get away from trauma in our lives. It comes part and parcel with living.
Exactly. I watched too much TV over the weekend, Tyler. I'm laid up with an Achilles injury, and I watched two documentaries. One of them was horrific. This person did this horrible thing. I won't get into it. But she was in the documentary, and at the end of it, she was saying, "Yeah, but I had a lot of trauma in my life." And it's like, oh, okay. So because you had a lot of trauma, you went off and did this horrible stuff. Another documentary that I watched was called Molly, and for anyone who hasn't
That's a great
seen it,
show.
I would recommend it. Yes.
Yeah.
And just not to ruin the show for you, but this guy had massive amounts of trauma. And he took that trauma and he used it for good in the world. He changed the world because of the trauma that he had been through. So what's the difference between the two? The one guy realized that trauma, it's interesting watching his story. That trauma actually helped him understand his purpose. And through that wound is where the light entered. He was able to feel the pain, to sit in it, to process it, and to understand that there was a why to it. The other woman was unconscious. It was living inside of her, and she was just reacting to it. and started doing horrible things.
And felt helpless to it.
It owned her. It dominated her. Not everybody who's been sexually abused becomes an abuser. Right, Tyler? And I'm not saying that to minimize anything, but that trauma, you can take it and you can move it and process it and learn from it. But how?
Yeah, you're getting into like the crux of the question now, Brannon, because if we look at the definition, it's like, okay, this thing fundamentally changed me and I attach some kind of interpretation or meaning to that thing, which is normal. Everybody has that happen. And so this parent who's asking the question, it's think about in essence the map of meaning for this experience. And as a parent, what you're trying to do is you're trying to open up a place where there's the ability to have open processing. The brain is looking for a way to put some order to what just happened in a situation where there's probably not going to be a lot of order that is found. The brain's going to have a hard time, but once the brain has order, it's able to make that file, so to speak, and put it away and be like, that was my experience of X, Y, and Z. So as a parent, you've got your child who's just experienced this thing. You don't necessarily need to go overdo it. Don't go over chase it. Don't go over, but the brain is looking for a way to talk through things. And it's okay to have a landing spot, to be the landing spot to encourage your child to process through those things and help them in the construction of the meaning of what just took place. And then it leads to the process. And I use that word process because sometimes it takes time and work and effort to move from this thing just happened to the hell that it's now causing me as a result of the wrestle that I'm having with my beliefs, my feelings, the experience itself, flashbacks, whatever else, to eventually something that we call post-traumatic growth. And post-traumatic growth is where I take the thing that I just experienced that was the hell, and eventually it becomes part of the catalyst into part of what makes me grow, what makes me have more meaning, purpose, understanding, conviction, whatever else it is in our lives, right? So, I mean, one of the reasons, there's lots of reasons, but one of the reasons why I ended up choosing to become a professional counselor was actually because of the help that I received right after the thing happened with my friend. And there was like this, I went to a couple little group sessions where the counselors were there and they just opened up space for us to talk and process things. And in a world that I felt so terrible in and I felt like I couldn't reach out to anybody else, having a safe place just to talk through it with some compassion and understanding was extremely valuable.
You have to, just to reiterate what you're saying, Tyler, you have to feel to heal. And there's this place, and I think the therapy world is starting to realize this more and more. If I have trauma and I go to you, Tyler, and I just start telling you about what happened, and I'm just telling you what happened, I'm describing it to you. That's one little way to process.
That's also a protection that the brain does sometimes, where it almost feels like when you're talking to someone who's had massive trauma, they can keep everything from their neck above and they can talk and tell you all the details of like, yeah, when I was 3, this happened, when I was 5, this happened, when I was 7. And it's all just like this rational thing, but it's like it's disconnected from the emotional part of the being.
Yeah. The thing that's challenging is, in order to get to that place of growth, you have to take the risk of surrender in order to allow the process to happen. And I'm going to see if I can explain this because it's hard to grasp fully. But you have to feel to heal. What we're going to do this weekend, Tyler, with Rising Sun is take a lot of people who've had a lot of trauma in their life and try to find that in EMDR, they call it your window of tolerance. You find that space where your soul is open, your ego is unburdened, but you're in a safe setting so that you can go into the pain, sit in the pain, and as you sit in that pain, whether it's through listening to music, crying, actually talking openly and vulnerably, experiencing what happened, you start to release that energy that went inside of you when you experience that trauma. And you can't just force it out. You can't talk it out. You can't shut down and just bury it really, really deep. That doesn't work. And I really like what you said about a parent. I think a parent can be a place that is really safe, and so can a therapist, that is really safe for a 17-year-old to just start to be vulnerable and open, to cry in their arms, to open up about how they're feeling, just to be there for them. So as a parent, you don't want to fix it. You don't want to tell them everything's going to be okay. You just want to get curious. You want to hold space is what you want to do, so that they can have an experience to start to process and move that energy.
Exactly. I think just that's beautiful, Brannon. And it could be day to day, it's going to be different. Like there's going to be all the normal things that come with trauma. There's going to be numbness. There's going to be confusion. There's going to be sadness. There's going to be anger. There's going to be all sorts of different kinds of feelings. And a lot of times when we see the people that we love in pain, we think that it's our job to make sure that the pain goes away instantly. And so we hurry and tell them things that are like solutions to the problem, or quick things like at least blank, at least that, at least this, and none of that really works, as well as being able to step into this space where not only they can talk it through rationally, but they can be safe to be wherever they're at emotionally. So if they're numb one day, it's okay for them to be numb.
Yeah.
And if they're sad one day, don't hurry and piece them back together. Let them cry, let them process, let the body do its job. Mm-hmm. In fact, be a place that can receive that and facilitate that. When we look at like emotion focused therapy, whenever there's a core emotion that starts to come up, which this trauma will bring up these core emotions, the therapist is supposed to amplify that emotion in the office, not try to get rid of it. Yeah. And so the therapist opens it up and says, tell me more. Man, it looks like you're feeling this, or wow, I can see your body's doing this. Like, what's that all about? And the therapist actually helps to facilitate the processing. Almost imagine like the emotion is trapped deep inside, and we're trying to open up almost like the heart chakra and say, let it flow through. Yes. Come through.
Yes.
Come through. Like, it's okay. Like,
you're safe. We're holding this container, this space here for you. Come through with energy, with emotion, feelings, thoughts. Like, just come, move it. Help this move forward. Tyler, I watched. I've been watching a lot of stuff lately, but I watched The Iron Claw.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Talk about trauma. There's tons of trauma in that movie. But how did the parents like respond to all the emotion in that movie?
Yeah, if you want an example of what not to do as a parent, watch that movie.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they pretty much just like ignored all of the things that were going on in terms of the trauma that was happening, and basically just continued to kind of soldier on and pretend like nothing had happened and told their kids just to deal with it, basically.
Which led to what?
Which led to
more trauma.
More and more trauma stacking itself on top of each other until like, yeah, you have to watch the movie.
They're saying the family was cursed, and what's interesting is the curse that the family had is that they refused to process and feel.
It goes back to this definition. It wasn't the event itself that caused the trauma, but the meaning that you made out of the event.
Yep.
And in that movie, that's exactly what it was. The curse, the family curse, so to speak, was the inability to process trauma.
Which is interesting because the mom and the dad prided themselves on being tough. Just
strong.
And the reality is they were the opposite of that. They weren't strong enough to actually feel. And it's weird. Our society has that whole belief of like the strong thing to do when something like this traumatic happens is to like keep going to school, be tough, move forward, and like, don't let it just destroy your life.
Right, which you don't want it to just destroy your life. And sometimes when you're in a flooded state, some healthy distraction's not a bad thing. But what you're getting at, Brannon, is But then we're taught to just shove everything under the rug and pretend like it's all gone and done. And then what ends up happening is it'll start to come out sideways years later. And in a certain sense, you can't, like as you said earlier, Brannon, eventually you have to pay the piper through emotional processing to help with the healing and the changing of the meaning. If I learned that I'm a terrible person in a very emotionally charged way, the only way that I'm going to really come to understand that I'm actually a really great person and a work in progress and someone who's okay to make mistakes is going to in part be through emotionally charged ways.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Explain that. What do you mean?
I need to have an experience. So I need to have something that's not just a head knowledge thing, but a heart knowledge thing. Right. So I'll give you an example. I was feeling really abandoned by God several years ago, and I went to this retreat. It was a John Eldredge retreat, and they talked about this kind of concept of like basically taking the arrow to your heart is how he, and that he's talking about trauma that way. So, and the arrow to your heart is what the result was Tyler, you're not good enough. Like you're only good enough if you perform well, right? So I'm sitting there and I've recognized this. This is a new belief I have. I know where it's all formed from in the terms of the way I've interpreted my world, right? And now I'm sitting out here in nature and I'm pondering these questions and I'm wrestling with God. I'm like, God, like, why aren't you here for me? Why can't you just love me without me having to perform? And I'm just like fighting with God. Like it's more of like a fight than a prayer. And I'm sitting out there in nature. I'm like huddled into this like little group of bushes on a mountainside, supposed to be journaling something. And I'm having this wrestle. And in the midst of it, I heard and felt kind of a feeling. And the thought that came through my mind was like, let me. Let me. And I was like, what? Like, I've been asking you to forever. Like, and then I heard let me. And then it dawned on me. And it wasn't a head thing. It was more of a heart opening of like, I have been dictating to God how he's supposed to love me. And yet I look around my life now and I see manifestations of God's love everywhere. But I didn't have the eyes, and I mean, I'm pointing at my eyes, but I'm actually holding my heart. I didn't have the heart to feel that because my own belief was getting in the way. And so I had to have an emotional experience. In this case, it was through nature and prayer. There have been other experiences that have come through things like EMDR or ART or even some IFS work or a lot of the stuff that we do at the retreats, same types of things. Like they're like whole body experiences that are providing an opportunity for the new belief to be cemented in.
That's great, Tyler. But you're telling me that if like I think of all the people that we talk to on the show who are in these complex, crazy situations, trying to figure out how to navigate. They've been hurt by another person. And it's like what you're saying is to get to a place of surrender. That's kind of what I'm hearing you say. Let God.
In essence, yes. So surrender in the sense of like surrender is not giving up, it's giving over the outcome that I think should be in my head and being open to the possibilities of whatever is actually real.
So I 1000% totally, completely agree with what you're saying, but that's a hard thing to grasp and to accept.
Yeah.
But I think taking it, the reason why I'm like really highlighting this is because taking it to that level is sometimes what it takes to heal trauma. Because the more you can surrender, the more you can turn your will and your life over to the care of God, the more you're going to feel peace about the things that have happened in your life. It is the key to healing your trauma. But then you come back to, but wait, my fixed mindset stuff, like that should not happen. And that should not. Think of Charlie Kirk's wife right now. She'd have a good reason to be like, no, like that's not okay. That's like one of the worst things that could ever happen. And she's supposed to let God. She's supposed to to surrender and let God, and that's how she can heal? You see what I'm saying,
Eventually, through
Tyler?
the process,
Right.
that's the pathway forward eventually. But it doesn't mean there's not going to be stops in those places of, yeah, it was wrong and it shouldn't have happened. And
The pain, anguish,
all of
anger.
that stuff. Yeah. All of the woulda, shoulda, couldas, like all of that stuff. You can't help but have that. But I think what we're getting at is there has to be the ability to embrace that whole process, to give room for each of the stops on the train line, so to speak, and say, yeah, like I shouldn't be mad at myself for being mad today. I need to actually see what that anger is there for and what it's trying to teach me or do for me right now.
Mm-hmm.
The sadness, I shouldn't hurry and shove that under the rug. I need to find a safe place and time and maybe a person to process it with and allow that sadness to flow through and see what it has to do for me and what it's trying to teach me. And that's where most of us, we're too afraid of the painful side of emotions, especially when it comes to the really highly emotionally charged things that have already hurt us, that we would rather find a therapist to just talk through it only and keep it in our head. We would rather go numb ourselves out incessantly on social media or television or something else, video games or something, rather than actually allow ourselves to have that flow of emotion move through us and allow us a chance to process and come to a different meaning and part of the story.
Yeah. Tyler, I want to come back to just the nuts and bolts of, like, if you're a parent and your child has been through something traumatic, like what to do, what will be helpful. So here's some things, and please add to this, Tyler, whatever comes up for you. But the first thing is what we already mentioned is your relationship with them is extremely important, and the more trust you have, the more safety you have, the more ability you have to hold space for them so that they can get to that state of process with you. You're not their therapist, but you are their parent who is supposed to protect them and supposed to create some safety for them. So just like any listening skills that we talk about, get curious, validate, reflective listen, show empathy, and hold space. And don't push it too hard, but they need to know that you are safe. So anything to add to that, Tyler?
No, I think that's really good as far as being a parent goes. The other thing that I would kind of just pay attention to and maybe create opportunity for is that processing sometimes happens in different kinds of ways. There's nothing wrong if they want a little bit of alone time, but if they're all of a sudden every day down there depressed in their bedroom playing video games, then there's probably going to be some level of encouragement / intervention to get some movement going. And so a lot of times people process things through movement. So going for walks, going for drives, side by side rather than face to face, that can be a little bit of a safer form of communication sometimes for some people. And again, you don't have to go pull it out of them, just offer your presence.
Yeah, we are not saying just like as their parent, you're a safe space. And if they go into a state of numbing out and you're like, well, I'm just supposed to be safe, so do whatever you want. No, as a parent, you're there to protect them. If you see addictive behaviors increase after trauma, then you want to encourage them to feel, to process, to go into that. So you're not loading them up with the what do we say, Mountain Dew and video games?
Yeah, exactly.
You're not loading up with the Mountain Dew and video games. Rather, you're safe to actually process. Tyler, with your trauma, did you have flashbacks? Did it affect your sleep?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want you to go into it too much. We're not in a therapy session.
No, yeah, I did. I think that's actually part of the reason why my pornography stuff increased was because I couldn't really sleep at night. And so I'd end up on the computer till 2 a.m. after everyone went to bed, just looking for a way to like numb out. And yeah, I did have flashbacks. In fact, still to this day, like I've done a lot of work and I've done some EMDR on this, which by the way, I would recommend to this parent, like make available some of those treatments if your child is willing and wanting some help that way with EMDR or ART. Those would be the two that I'd recommend. But I did. I still do, but they don't. This is what's about this definition we talked about earlier. Like I can still see in great detail certain parts of those images now, but they don't light my body up like they used to.
Right.
Like I used to like have a flashback and then my whole body would be right back in that moment, like, woof, like, whoa, I'm right here again and I'm doing first aid and da 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 da. Like, and my, I'm in pure anxiety and my chest is tight. I can't breathe. I'm flushed. It's like now I can look at that picture. And when I look at that picture, I still remember that it happened, but the meaning of it all has changed. And the pain, that emotional charge has dissipated over the years through the experiences, partly through EMDR, and I would say also through some of the other kinds of experiential types of things that have gone on for me. But yeah, for sure.
So you're describing desensitization, and that's the goal. Is I had flashbacks with some of my trauma for a while. It's affected my sleep. You can start to see it in things like depression and anxiety. So if it were my child, 17-year-old, who, this is a pretty unique situation. 17-year-old sees somebody get shot. My child would be going to therapy and doing specifically ART and EMDR, and just to start to desensitize that trauma. So be a safe space. Provide the resource for them they're not going to understand that why should I go do this weird therapy to go back into that experience. But adolescents can really respond well to EMDR. They actually can do really well with EMDR and ART. So I would get them into therapy. I would be a safe space. Anything else, Tyler?
Yeah, and then I would just provide opportunities for emotion to move and flow, which might be different kinds of activities. It could be some nature stuff or some, like I said, drives, walks, music, water, different kinds of things where the body naturally wants to flow and move can be helpful in the processing of emotions as well.
Yeah. Whoever asked this question, they are lucky that you're their parent. It's awesome that you're thinking this way, and that you really care this much. And so you're one of those type of parents that can really help them move forward. And remember, it's a process. And for all of us to heal our trauma, we're actually all in the process of healing trauma.
All the time.
All the time. And so be patient with them. This isn't going to go perfectly. It's not going to just work. It's a process. So be engaged in the process of healing. Get to that place that Tyler was just talking about of, yeah, this horrible thing happened, and it is horrible, and it will stay horrible, but it doesn't dictate my life, and it doesn't dominate my thoughts and create anxiety and all of these other symptoms because of the trauma, just like Gabor Mate said.
Yeah. Thank you for submitting the question. If you guys have more questions, therapybrothers.org, you can either go and type us a question, kind of like this one that we got to today, or you can actually sign up to become a caller on the show. We would love to either have you on the show or try to answer your question on a day like today. So therapybrothers.org. Thank you for being here with us. And until next time, keep on keeping on.